Welcome back to the Meal Prep Monday podcast. I'm your host and founder of Prep Dish, Allison Schaaf. Today we have another interview episode with Sarah Hart-Unger. If you are listening to this podcast, a reminder that the interview episodes are up on YouTube. So if you would like to see me and Sarah, you can head over to YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube, just know that only the interview episodes are up on YouTube right now. So if you want to see any of the other episodes, most of the podcast episodes are solo episodes, and those are not on YouTube. So just find Meal Prep Monday podcast on your favorite podcast app. Before we get into the episode, a reminder that if you have not tried out the time-saving meal prep meal plans at Prep Dish, we have a free trial set up at prepdish.com/MPM, short for Meal Prep Monday. That will be linked in the show notes. We actually, on today's episode with Sarah, so she is actually a user of Prep Dish, and we start out talking all things planning, including getting into something she calls quintiles, which I just love. And then if you stay through the end of the episode, we get into how she handles meals and mealtime in her house, everything from how she does grocery shopping, how they use Prep Dish, but they use it, she has a nanny that's helping. And so her and the nanny kind of take turns and use it together, which I always think is really cool to hear. So we get to hear just kind of some real life, how she's making mealtime happen in, a busy household she has a few kids. She's also a full-time physician, as well as having 2 podcasts. We'll get all into that. When I re-listened, I realized I said I was on her Best Laid Plans podcast. I was actually a guest on Best of Both Worlds. I'll try and find that episode and link in the show notes, but I just said the wrong one there. So let's head into today's episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Meal Prep Monday. I am here today with Sarah Hart-Unger. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me, Allison.
Yes, I'm excited to have you on the podcast today. I was actually on one of her podcasts, The Best Laid Plans, a few months ago. So you can go back. We'll link that in the show notes. But today we are going to talk about one of her other passions, and it's a shared passion, which is planning. You have a podcast all about planning. I have a podcast that's all about planning meals. But before we get into all the planning things, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I live in South Florida. I am a physician and I still work part-time seeing patients 3 days a week. I'm married to another physician, so we're pretty busy, and I have 3 kids, ages almost 6, 9, and 11. So we're in that whirlwind phase of parenting where my kids are in a lot of activities and there just always seems to be something going on. And I'm really enjoying this phase of life. So aside from my physician job, the other days of the week, I spend podcasting, writing a blog that's been in existence since 2004, going to celebrate the 20th anniversary next year, and teaching some courses around planning type content. And it's been a blast.
Wow. Congrats on almost 20 years for the blog. That's really amazing.
Really amazing or really compulsive. You can decide, but it's been a fun ride.
Awesome. Well, what I would like to start out is just talking about planning in general, and then towards the end, we'll get into meal planning specifically. So tell us a little bit about how you approach planning in your life.
Yeah, so I approach planning as something that is really essential to having my days run pretty smoothly and without the stress of kind of wondering what might happen or being surprised by things. Of course, still things come up. Again, I'm a parent. I am actually home today. It's a rain day because it rained a lot. So, you can't plan everything. I certainly didn't plan that. But I have found that planning on every single level is kind of essential to A, making things less stressful, and B, helping me move forward on the things that are really important to me and kind of crafting this unique career that I've been able to make. And what I mean by every level, I call it my nested goals system. That's how I coined it. But a really big detailed planning session for the year, a kind of medium-sized planning session every single season, a slightly smaller one each month, a slightly smaller than that one each week, and then a really short targeted one every single day. And I've kind of developed rituals for myself, and I help other people develop rituals for themselves at each of those levels so that we can figure out what are the pieces that we really need to make things run smoothly. And I found that that's a way where my big goals don't get left behind, but the little minutia also don't kind of build up to the point of becoming really, really stressful and putting me into total reactive mode. So that's kind of the basics around how I love to plan. And I have so many different tools and strategies around that basic system that I could talk about it all day, but I'll stop now for
Yeah.
to
Well,
clarify.
and that's great. So let's dig into a few of those layers. So like yearly, do you set a date on the calendars? It's the same time each year. How do you make that happen?
Yes. So I got in the habit of doing this with my husband. His birthday is in December. And a few years ago, I was like, okay, I mean, I didn't call it a planning retreat, but I was like, let's have a little date weekend. And then during that weekend, we can spend some time thinking through the next year. And I was like, oh, this is really great. Like, we're kind of really thinking through our year together. That and the fact that one of the podcasts I'm part of, which is Best of Both Worlds with Laura Vanderkam, we co host that one. She's a time management expert. And every single year, we do goal setting episodes. So it forces me to really spend some dedicated time thinking about what I want for the next year. And over time, I've realized like that's really essential for me. Otherwise, it's so easy to kind of go on autopilot or not, start new things because you don't take the time to really think about what you want. So
Mm-hmm.
it can look a lot of different ways, but I honestly suggest at least a full day, if not, a day and a half or like kind of a weekend. Obviously, you're not going to be planning the entire time, but to have that space. And I actually hosted my very first live retreat this year to plan 2024. We held it in Fort Lauderdale. We had 20 people there, all women, and it was so much fun. It was such a blast. So maybe I'll do that again next year. I'm already thinking about it, but people really enjoy having like dedicated space. And I know that's hard if you have like young ones at home, if you have an inflexible job, but there are creative ways that you can make that happen, like trading off with your partner. Like maybe you dedicate a weekend, but you take the kids for an outing in the morning and they get to plan. And then in the evening, you swap. And then maybe at night, the kids watch a movie and you kind of compare notes. Like that would be kind of a way of doing things together. Or you could, decide in advance that if you do have a more structured job with paid leave, that you're going to dedicate this day off where the kids are in school or daycare. That's just going to be your planning day. So there are ways to do it, even if you are fairly strapped for free time.
No, I love that. And I'm a big fan of that, of trying to, for mine, I do try and like get away, even if it's a local hotel, like have some time by myself. And then, yeah, sometimes my husband and I will also do. It depends on the year and babies and all that. But if we can fit in the night away, I think having that night to like discuss it, but then also like have a nice dinner and sleep on it and then kind of revisit, it really just helps like the second day, like put in everything on the calendar. And, so that's awesome. So then after years, what was the next layer?
The next layer is season. And one of the things that I encourage everyone to put on their kind of seasonal review process is to look at your annual goals list. So that's number one. That guarantees that every single season, and I'll talk about how I like to divide the seasons personally in a little bit, but that means every single season you're going to have that list in front of you as you're kind of creating the goals that you're going to focus on for the next few months. Because I think it's very easy to go ahead and make this ambitious, like 24 amazing things I'm going to do in 2024. And then like you put it in a drawer and it's gone and you forget about it, or you just don't have any structured way to keep bringing it back to figure out, sometimes when you set goals for a year, some of the things aren't going to be done in January. Like some of the things are more appropriate to be done later. But if you know you're going to revisit that list every season and figure out what fits in, then that's like a way that you won't forget what's on that list. Now, one thing I want to clarify, because some people get a little confused and they're like, wait, am I making like all the seasonal goals for like the entire year? No, like you want to kind of start fresh each season and create your seasonal priorities based on A, a review of your annual goals list, and B, what happens to be going on during that season. Like, how does it feel? How busy are you? Are the kids doing a million different things at school? Are you in a really particularly busy work season? Like, all those variables come together for you to decide what's going to be a priority over that next chunk of time.
Awesome. And then after seasonal, is it weekly or?
Some people do monthly and some people skip
Okay.
monthly. So some people like to do kind of like, there are certain things in our lives that tend to come up on a monthly cadence, like bill paying, budgeting, subscribe and save if you do that for the Amazon. So some people actually prefer not to do a whole monthly like planning or goal setting session, but instead do a more detailed weekly session once a month. So your mileage may vary on that. I've gotten a lot of feedback from various users, whether they prefer having a monthly or not. But then certainly from seasonal, it's really essential to have a weekly session. And that is where you're like, looking at your calendar ahead, where are the potential pitfalls? Where might you need to call in for extra help? What, projects do your kids have that you need to order stuff for? That's where like the whole kind of staying 3 steps ahead can be really, really helpful in helping the week go more smoothly. And also to look at that seasonal list so that you can make sure some of those priorities that you've kind of thought through are being addressed throughout your week. So at each level, again, you're kind of looking at the level above and then kind of using that to shape what you're going to accomplish. Now, of course, the scope of tasks is going to be a lot smaller on a weekly basis than on a seasonal level, but still they could be a piece of a bigger project that you're going to tackle.
Great. And what tools are you using to facilitate some of this?
Yeah. So I am very open to different tools. I personally really enjoy paper for a lot of my planning, but I've worked with so many people, mostly women by now, and know that like digital is definitely really works better for a lot of people for different types of reasons. I think especially if you have a corporate type job where you have really unpredictable meetings that get moved a lot, paper can just become really frustrating. That's not really the case with me. As a physician, my hours are pretty set and like I can see my patient schedule in a very separate resource that's, like a lockdown electronic medical record. So for me, the paper works. I love to use a resource like Apple Notes or OneNote is another alternative, or Notion to have like a digital filing cabinet for things I want to keep long term. So that's a tool that I use that's outside of the paper that I really love to keep track of like different forms from school or like travel planning documents. All of my podcast scripts, funnily enough, are in there. And a lot of it's kind of like my whole like digital filing cabinet. But in terms of actually planning out my like daily tasks and writing out my schedule, I personally love the Hobonichi Cousin A5 planner, which is from Japan, and it has space for both monthly, actually annual as well, weekly and daily planning. So it does a lot. And I have a pretty complex. I mean, like people will push back and be like, well, you must not have a lot going on if you can plan mostly on paper. And like, yes, I use digital supplements, but I do feel like I have a lot going on. And I do feel like planning on paper works for me. So I like to sometimes push back on that one. And I love so many different planners. I mean, I review planners on the podcast. So lots and lots of brands I'm familiar with. And there's so many good ones out there and so many different ways to use them. And I think it's fun.
Yeah, no, I am with you on that. And I am also, because I've noticed in listening to some of your episodes that you will try out new ones. And I'm like that each year. I'm always excited. Okay, which one am I going to try this year? And, it's varied so much on seasons. Like if I'm in baby mode, I don't need the full focus planner where it's every single day. I need just like the week at a glance. And so I've switched over the years, and it's always fun to see, what works. And I'm also with you though. I use all electronic. I have supplements there, but I need to have it written in front of me day to day. I need to have that visual list. And I just think there's something that happens when you're putting pen to paper and something that clicks in a way that just is not happening digitally. So
I agree. And there's also like, if you have your planner with you, I think people underestimate how efficient it is to just write something down really quickly. Like you're not unlocking your phone, opening up the app, getting distracted by the other app. Oh, wait, what was I even doing? Like it's really quite fast to just write down a little, okay, dentist appointment at 2:00, like, done, moving on. So I think there's an efficiency there that people tend to assume that digital must be more efficient, but it isn't always. Can I talk about quintiles? Because I didn't get to talk about
quintiles. Yes. Go into quintiles.
So I mentioned that I have like a unique way I like to divide the seasons of the year. And if you've heard me speak before, you may know this, but when I mention season, you can do the traditional quarters, like a business type calendar might have like January, February, March as a quarter, etc. But I do have school age kids, and I have found that my favorite way to break up the year is into 5 pieces. Number 1, I enjoy having one extra checkpoint, like who doesn't love their clean slate? And number 2, it just fits better with the rhythms of being a parent. And so I go January 1st to spring break to the end of the school year. The summer is 1 quintile, that's quintile 3. The start of school year to November 1st, and then November 1st to the end of the year. Why did I separate that? Because that time feels different. It feels special. It's like celebration. I call it reflection season. So I feel like it deserved its own special spot. So I love to divide the year that way. And I always feel ready to like revisit my routines and goals and everything when a new quintile comes up.
No, I love that way of looking at it and just making it work with, your family's schedule. And I'm just getting to the age where my kids might start entering those school seasons. And I've always worked off the quarters because I've been more from the business perspective, but I love having in the back of my mind, I may have to shift this at some point because it makes so much sense to me.
You can always keep your business stuff on the traditional quarters, but then do
Yep.
kind of like home sessions based on the other part. Like we still do like financial discussions on the quarterly level because that's when you get statements and stuff, but all the rest, quintiles.
Makes sense. Great. Well, let's shift gears a little bit now and talk about how you use some of this and how you approach your meal planning.
Yes. So I have been using Prep Dish for a long time. You guys are a supporter of Best Laid Plans, which is amazing. But I had already been looking at it even before that because it is the type of food that I really like and like feeding my family, like just really like simple ingredients put together in interesting ways. So my interest was piqued from the get-go. And when I started trying it, I was like, I love things that are efficient and that like are actually making my life easier. And I feel like there are so many solutions being sold to us in the cooking world that
Mhm.
promise that. But I actually like find that Prep Dish actually delivers that. Like
Mhm.
spending a Sunday prepping actually does make the week a lot easier. And so I've been using the super fast plan mostly for the past few years now. We don't use it every single week. I would say we use it about 60% of the time. The times we might not use it is like if everything's crazy and we're coming back from vacation, we may resort to something like a meal kit or just like standards for our family. But like
Yep.
on a regular week, it just makes things super easy. And a lot of times, because I do work full time and we still have a nanny that helps with the kids, we kind of split the Prep Dish labor up between us. So a lot of times I'll start everything on the weekend and I'll actually cook the first meal on Sunday night. So that'll be like our Sunday dinner and then get some of the prep done. And then when she comes in Monday, she like finishes everything. And often she'll like make everything for the rest of the week just on because that's how streamlined it is. And then it's done. And then we have everything set up. I also find it very flexible in terms of like we'll sub out ingredients sometimes like if it's a type of like I don't love tilapia so I'm like okay I'll just put salmon or like whatever and it works well. And also my kids are not super picky and I'm very grateful for that, but one of them tends to be a little bit more selective. And usually it's easy to kind of keep some ingredients a little bit separate and then
Yep.
just be like, okay, well, we have sweet potatoes from this meal. We'll just leave a little bit of these out and then you can have it with like the leftover, pasta with chicken, like whatever it is. So I find it flexible enough that nothing goes to waste. And then I love if there are leftovers, I love taking prep dish
Yes.
leftovers for lunch.
Me
So
too.
yeah, we really, really enjoy it. And I do sometimes venture and do the gluten-free one. Like if I'm not as excited about the super fast and I look at that one and I'm like, ooh, seasonal fun
Yes.
stuff. And like there's a dessert in there. Like sometimes I'll venture out to that. So I think this year I might experiment with trying that menu a little bit more often. We're not gluten-free. And in fact, sometimes I'll sub a glutinous item for like the gluten-free
Yes.
pasta. But
I do
again, it's
that.
like cleaner ingredients. It's the type of flavors we like. It's a lot of protein, which I find really, really important. I'm a runner and like I realized this year that like the importance of getting enough protein. And I feel like Prep Dish works really, really well for that.
Great. So I love hearing how different people make it work because I think I always say in the beginning, yeah, kind of follow it through as is for a week or two. But really, the key to making it sustainable is to figure out how to make those tweaks and how to make it work. So, are there other things you're doing like portion sizes? Are you buying exactly the portions it says, or is that something?
Sometimes I increase because there's 5 of us and my kids eat a lot and I like leftovers. Like especially sometimes I'll double the protein on purpose. So we'll have like some more for lunches. I tend to do my grocery shopping based on your list. I actually sometimes just use the paper and then just add some of my own things and bring that to Trader Joe's or wherever I'm going. Trader
Yep.
Joe's a lot recently. And honestly, your ingredients are very TJ's friendly for those that enjoy shopping there. So yeah, sometimes I'll do some double, but other times I just do it as is.
Okay. And so it sounds like are you usually doing grocery shopping in person or ordering or?
I do lately. So I don't even know if Trader Joe's has like an Instacart option, but I really like going there. And sometimes I'll bring 1 or 2 kids. I try not to bring all 3. That's
Yep.
like not terribly much fun. But like my oldest is now helpful enough that I can send her on little missions and she'll get stuff. And then they have like the tiny little carts there. So my youngest really enjoys like doing her own shopping and then you get a lollipop at the end. So I actually kind of enjoy my shopping experience. I did do grocery delivery for a while, and I tended to go through the Whole Foods route, and honestly, it got quite expensive. So I love Whole Foods and I still shop there at times, but TJ's has kind of become my weekly standard.
No, I mean, it's my job. And so I always feel like I can justify that I spend a lot on groceries and, I do some recipe testing and we're in the country, but we can get Whole Foods delivery, but it just sort of adds up. And so recently Kroger started delivering out here and if you sign up for the membership, you get free delivery and no option to tip because tips is just like baked in. And so I've started doing more Kroger and then I'll have to fill in with Whole Foods depending just because there's some ingredients you can only get from there. But I've started doing a little more of the delivery side of things, but mainly because I'm not always on the path to the grocery store. It's not close by. So
yeah, it sounds like you live far from stuff. I live in a suburb where like there's so many options close to me.
yeah.
Publix is our main grocery chain in Florida. I go there too sometimes. I can get there in like less than 7 minutes. So it's very easy to get to the store here.
Yeah. Well, and I will go because my kids also, they love to go, but it's one of those things. It's like almost like you have to plan it as a whole event. It's not like a quick in and out because they get so excited to go, which I think is good for them and a good experience, but it doesn't need to happen every week.
Yeah. But it's fun. It's to like allow them to like choose snacks and things like that. And helps if they've picked it, they're probably more likely to eat it too, which is nice.
Exactly. Like I always say, set them loose in the produce section. Say, hey, why don't you they love to pick out a fruit. And sometimes they'll like start eating it right there, whatever. But I'm like, pick out your fruit because they have always in the morning, their snack is a fruit. So I'm like, go pick out your fruit snack. And they run around and grab a thing of grapes.
Yeah. And then you end up with like golden kiwis or gooseberries or like something unexpected. And it's fun.
Yeah, that is fun. Great. Anything else you'd like to add about your approach to meal planning or?
I would say that I'm not afraid to be really boring when it comes to breakfast and lunch. So, I mean, part of me is like, oh, I kind of wish prep just had more but then I'm like, no, it's kind of just really easy to just have like your few options. And in the morning, my kids really don't care. Like keeping it as simple as possible really works for us. And then for lunch, it's like, what can I have that has protein? Like that's how I make my decision. And like, is it leftovers? Is it eggs or is it cottage cheese? And then like I add to that and like, it doesn't have to be a whole production. So I'm really happy with my current rotation, and prep dish is a big part of that.
Good. And then I was going to ask you the days. So do you follow the order or do you write them out on a board, on a couch?
Oh yeah. I do usually go in order. I tend to look, I mean, if there's like an obvious one where I know we're all going to be out and it's a meal that like won't really work for that, then I might make a swap. But in general, I go Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. So the 5 meals in the super fast plan. Again, I'm making Sunday and I'm starting the prep and then the rest of it is like kind of throughout the week. And then Friday is like leftover / whatever we happen to have. Sometimes it's frozen pizza. Sometimes we have enough leftovers. It varies. Saturday, we do either usually go out or have takeout. My kids have reached the age where going out as a family is actually kind of nice. I know those of you with younger kids are like, oh, the downside is they order off the real menu, especially my 2 bigger ones. I'm like, that adds up. Like, did you really need the lobster roll? Like, I don't know. but it's more pleasurable than it used to be. So that's kind of nice. And then Sunday is prep dish all over again. And usually I will have shopped either on Saturday or Sunday. So our fridge is stocked so I can start making the meal.
Oh, awesome. Thanks. That helps wrap it all together. Well,
and we have a whiteboard. Sorry. We do have a whiteboard in our hallway that has all of their activities. And then I also put what's for dinner each night. So that way no one has any questions.
That's great. I think it's good to have it there and everyone can see it. And yeah, that's very helpful. Great. Well, thank you. That gives a much better view and love just hearing other people apply that in their lives. So this has been a really fun conversation. I could talk to you so much longer. We could go so many different directions. I love talking planning and can tell that you do as well. So before we sign off, why don't you let listeners know where they can connect with you, tell them all about your podcasts.
Yeah. So 2 podcasts where you can listen to me. One is called Best Laid Plans. It's about all things planning and planning adjacent. And then the other one is Best of Both Worlds. That's with time management expert Laura Vanderkam. She's also an author and speaker. And we have a lot of fun talking about making work and life fit together. And then my 20-year-old blog can be accessed at theshoebox.com, theshubox.com.
These will all be linked in the show notes as always. Thank you again, Sarah. It's been a pleasure having you on. And I also just love working with you and supporting what you do there at Best Laid Plans.
Aw, thank you so much. They're very synergistic. They go well together.
Agreed. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. That was such a fun interview. I always love hearing her perspective on planning and all of the different tools and systems that she uses there. And of course, it's always fun to hear how other people are making meals work in their household. If you are interested in trying Prep Dish, remember we have that 2-week free trial at prepdish.com/MPM, short for Meal Prep Monday. You can try it out. I love all of her kind of tips and tricks for making it work in your household. And if you are a longtime listener of this podcast, a reminder that we love those ratings and reviews. They just help other people to find us. If you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. And that is all I have for this week. We'll be back again next Monday with another episode.